Good day. Welcome to News Express. I'm Chidera Eso. How many times must the same story repeat before it stops being treated as an isolated incident and starts being recognized as a structural failure? In Kwara State, the abduction of Salman Olatunji Aweda is once again forcing Nigeria to confront a security reality that is becoming increasingly difficult to explain away. The Monarch of Olayinke community in Ife-Olodun local government area was reportedly taken in a midnight raid by armed men suspected to be terrorists. Eyewitness accounts describe a coordinated operation involving more than 10 attackers who stormed the residence, forced entry and overpowered any form of resistance before whisking their targets away into nearby forest terrain. Another individual present in the house was also abducted. This is not a random act of violence. It follows a pattern that has become disturbingly familiar across several parts of the country. Nighttime timing, rural targets, armed group mobility, rapid execution, forest escape routes, delayed response, and then the familiar silence that follows. And so the question becomes unavoidable. When a pattern becomes this consistent, at what point does it being an incident and start being a system? Reports indicate that the adopters are demanding 400 million naira for the Monarch's release. The figure itself is no longer shocking in isolation. What is more troubling is the normalization of ransom economies of this scale. These are not arbitrary demands. They reflect a structured understanding of value, leverage, and negotiation timelines. Kidnapping in this context is no longer purely opportunistic crime. It has evolved into a calculated operational model with identifiable logic. Select vulnerable but high-level targets, strike in low surveillance windows, retreat into familiar terrain, and initiate negotiation from a position of control. This is where the deeper concern begins to emerge. Because if the operational model is this consistent, then the issue is no longer just enforcement at the point of attack. It becomes a question of prevention architecture. Why are these communities still exposed at night? Why are response mechanisms consistently arriving after extraction rather than during interception? And why do perpetrators appear to operate with such a confidence in timing, terrain, and escape routes? The chairman of Ife-Olodun local government area, Abdurrashid Femi Yusuf, visited the affected community following the incident and assured residents that security agencies are working to secure the Monarch's release. Yet, here lies a growing tension in Nigerian security discourse: the widening gap between reassurance and resolution. Communities have heard this assurance repeatedly, yet the cycle persists. Attack, adoption, investigation, negotiation, and then repetition. At what point does repetition become evidence of structural limitation rather than isolated failure? What makes this incident particularly significant is not only the identity of the victim, but the symbolism attached to it. Traditional rulers occupy a central role in Nigeria's local governance structure. They are custodians of cultural authority, mediators of local disputes, and symbolic anchors for community stability. When such figures become targets, the impact extends beyond personal tragedy. It strikes at the psychological foundation of community security. And so, another question emerges. What happens to local governance legitimacy when its most visible symbols are no longer secure in their own homes? The broader pattern is difficult to ignore. Across multiple states, Similar incidents followed the same operational rhyme. Armed groups mobilize in coordinated numbers, often with apparent familiarities with terrain and security response timing. They strike swiftly, avoid prolonged engagement, and withdraw into forest corridors where pursuit becomes complex and delayed. This raises a more uncomfortable analytical question. Are these groups simply exploiting gaps in the system, or have they deployed operational superiority in specific environments where state response is structurally weaker? Because if the latter is true, then the challenge is not just tactical, it is systematic. It suggests a mismatch between threat mobility and response capability, between terrain familiarity and operational reach, between speed of execution and speed of intervention. And until that mismatch is addressed, each new incident will continue to follow the same trajectory. The abduction of a monarch is therefore not just a security breach. It is a signal event. It reveals how vulnerable rural authority structures have become in environments where armed groups can operate with relative freedom of movement and predictable escape pathways. It also exposes the emotional reality on the ground. In communities like Olayinke, fear is no longer episodic. It is becoming ambient. It shapes movements, restricts activity, and slowly erodes confidence in protective structures. And that may be the most dangerous consequence of all. Not just the occurrence of violence, but the gradual normalization of its possibility. So the central question remains unresolved and increasingly urgent. How many more repetitions of the same pattern will it take before the response itself changes? Because right now, what is unfolding is not just insecurity, it is repetition without disruption. That's all for now on News Express. Keep the conversation going, like, share, subscribe, and let your voice be heard in the comment section. Thank you for watching. I'm Chidera Esom. Have a beautiful day ahead.